You know what this is. It's another episode of the Ghosted podcast, hosted by me, you know me, Abby Rosenblum, where we're going to talk about dating. And today specifically, we're going to talk about introspective dating and introspection in general and how that can really help your dating life. You know, it may seem obvious, but I think we're going to get some really good tips. Usually I always learn something too from these episodes. So I'm so excited to have Dr. John DeOka with me today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Abby?
I am doing great. I want to read the people your bio because they need to know a little bit more about what you're about, and then I'll let you go into your background a little bit.
Let's do it.
So for those who don't know John yet, he is a nurse practitioner that became a certified nurse coach in 2017. He established his practice, The Relationship Prescriber, in 2018 after working on his own journey and struggles in relationships and after spending years working in plastic surgery and witnessing the overemphasis of patients placing time and energy on their external appearance and avoiding the internal work needed to give them the fulfillment they unconsciously crave. Ooh, I love that sentence. John's underlying passion for relationships and psychology unraveled over time, and his work involves teaching mental health to nursing students as a faculty member and helping clients with all types of relationships, including friendships and work relationships. John, you do it all.
I try. I really try.
So give me a little more background. I'm sure people listening are curious too. You know, you're seeing all these people, you know, changing their external appearance. And like, what was that aha moment where you're like, wait, I need to try something different here? Hi, I'm Abby Rosenblum, founder of The Social Modern Matchmaking and your host of Ghosted, a podcast about making dating easy and fun again so you can find your boo. Get it? We'll talk with dating experts, coaches, and real clients of mine and single people from around the world. Stick around for corny jokes, dating advice, and deep dives into the psychology behind finding love.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, it came from my own self journey where I struggled with my own image, my own appearance, especially being a gay man in the modern day world in a very, very shallow society. So I was not feeling right about myself. Being a nurse practitioner and just being a natural born healer, I wanted to help people feel good about themselves. So that was an arena that I more than happily and speedily went into. And then I was like, wow, this is not as satisfying as I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. Retrospectively now, I always was fascinated with the way humans related to one another and interpersonal dynamics and conflict resolution and, elements of exclusion and friendship and connection. And then as I would talk to my clients in the plastic surgery setting, originally I was going to expand that kind of model of care where I was like, let's do both. Let's coach and let's do fillers. Why not?
What a combo. I kind of like that.
And I thought I was going to go down that path for a while, but then it just became so rewarding entering into psychology and personal development and seeing clients have their aha moment. And not even that, but holding people accountable, helping people discover things that they didn't know about themselves, and kind of shining that mirror so that they could see things that they weren't seeing before. And it wasn't their wrinkles.
Right. And we do get so focused on our physical appearance, which, sadly, it is still something you have to consider in dating. You're basically marketing yourself. I do a lot of work with people where we do a photo shoot and, redo their dating apps and things like that. So I guess, how do you kind of find that balance of, okay, yes, you have to care about how you look on the outside, but obviously the inside matters a lot more.
Of course. And I always go into these conversations and it's not like looks don't matter. Of course, looks matter. Right. We want to feel good. We want to look in the mirror and like what we see. And we also, want a partner that we're attracted to, of course, but it's more so like reprioritizing what's important because we know we're going to get older. Looks are going to fade. And what are some of the things that we could look for in a partner that are more sustainable? So what's that connection going to be like as, if what we desire is a long-term committed relationship? we talk about introspective dating. And I think one of the first lessons that I would teach would be getting very clear on why we're dating. Because
Such a good point.
I don't think a lot of us know. Yeah, we want to be in a relationship, but why? Okay, so we want a committed relationship for what? What's the purpose of this commitment? Do we just want companionship? Is this a commitment that we know we want to spend the rest of our lives with? Is this a commitment that we want to see what it'll be like? Is it going to teach us something? Or is this a commitment that we know we just want for the fun? Or do we want no commitment and we just want fun? So getting clear on some of that is the things that we could ask ourselves when we're introspectively dating. Right. And then when we're clear on that, you'll see what kind of people show up when we're interacting.
And I feel like sometimes it's hard for people to believe, because I tell people this too. It's like, once you put that intention out there, you are going to attract great people into your life. So, and a lot of people are like, Abby, come on. Like, that's not really going to happen. So do you get that reaction a lot? And how do you kind of coach people through that?
It's hard because there's a spiritual element to relationships that doesn't make sense. And to teach people to ground down into their intuition is not something we're accustomed to. Yeah. We're very brought up into the material world, into the science. And my degree is in a science, but I think there's an element of spiritualism, and where you take a step back, you go within, and you get very clear on what you want, what it looks like, how it'll show up, and you almost eliminate the background noise and give it some time. Because if we just keep looking externally, you're chasing something when most of it resides within. But I think what happens, what I see often and often, depending on the age of the clients I work with and where they're at too, is we just start chasing everything everybody else wants. And it's not necessarily what we want either.
Right. And it's like you grow up and you are kind of taught, okay, you want this, or you grow up and you have kids and get married and XYZ happens and you buy a house and you get all these pressures too from other people. So, this is where I think this whole concept that we're going to be talking about today of introspective dating is so important, of also being able to block out all of that noise and be like, okay, wait, what do I actually want? Kind of coming back to that initial question you have people think about. Do you ever feel like, how do you approach maybe someone whose family wants to have a lot of say in who they're, dating? And how would you even begin to do introspective dating if your family wants to approve or disapprove of everyone you're meeting?
It's a tough one because boundaries is something that comes very natural to me. So I've never
good for you. Yes.
So I've never ever had a hard time saying no. Sometimes I feel like I'm a toddler. No always came easy. But teaching people how to say no is hard because, again, what are we looking towards? We're looking to the external. We're not looking to see how it feels. So yes, these family members have expectations of us. They want to see us with this kind of partner or do this by this amount of timeline. But how does that feel and resonate with us? Because we have to be aligned within ourselves. The friction is when we're doing stuff for others. And then this is when we're waking up and, why anxiety is probably on an all-time high, because we're not living authentic lives. So
right.
That's probably the biggest struggle I have. And sometimes I have to turn people away that are just, you have to be able to say no. And we could practice ways to say it, nice ways to say no. Sometimes you need to just say a hard no, like, no, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah. And you even have to practice it in your work, as you were saying. Who is someone who might come to you that would, be someone you're like, okay, you're not ready yet to take this step with me. I'm just kind of curious, and I'm sure people listening also might be curious.
Yeah, I get approached by a lot of prospective clients that want me to help them get a particular person.
Yeah, that's an interesting request.
So this type of person, I have this person that I really want to be with. Can you help me work on myself so that I could get them? Sometimes I'll take them on. It depends on what the situation is.
Right.
Of course, there's no guarantees. However, what does that look like, and why are we, again, still seeking outside of ourselves? Because
Totally.
because typically the way I see it, we should be able to, anyone we want should be attracting towards us, and it doesn't even matter about looks. And that's from a spiritual perspective as well. But I'm not gonna keep pushing spiritualism. But why are we seeking to hire someone to get somebody else? To me, what good looks like, if someone asked me, like, what would a good client look like? I want to know more about myself. I don't know what I want in a relationship. Can you help me find that? Or I'm finding people that I'm attracted to that are not attracted to me. How can I reverse that? Versus what do I need to do to get, Abby, for example, so she'll be with me.
Right.
That's probably a red flag for me as a dating coach. Or I would say that the second kind of category of person is just someone that just really, really lacks awareness.
Right. And then that's even hard for them to also be like aware enough to then also come to you.
Right.
So multiple steps have got to happen in there.
Right. Usually the person that comes to me that's very aware is someone that has a good amount of disposable income that was like referred by someone. Oh, you should get a dating coach. They don't necessarily believe it, but it's just like, oh, let me try this.
Totally. And I mean, as a matchmaker, I am so appreciative of people like you in this space, because then you get people all ready to go. Then maybe they don't even need me. But then I love when someone has worked with a coach or dating coach or life coach before me, because then they're like, oh yeah, I'm not just focused on how much someone weighs or how shiny their skin is or, how white their teeth are, whatever it is. They're like, okay, these are like the important things that are under the skin.
I could only imagine what kind of a checklist that you get of external attributes.
Yeah. And like you, I also turn people away who, I have had people who have said like, she needs to weigh between this and this. And I'm just like, are you getting on the scale? Like, what is going on here? That's just a crazy requirement.
And anything too physical, I don't have like a hard rule, but let's keep the physical trait requirements 2-3 max, and don't make them like crazy. Like where we're saying, let's keep it more general. Like you prefer tall, not like no one under 6 foot, when I'm speaking to females.
Yeah. And straight women who are just always with the height. It's like all they want to talk about. And I'm just like, okay, so you're telling me if the person who hit everything you're looking for and they were 5'8", you wouldn't give them the time of day? Like, that's ridiculous. I do notice though, and from some, reading and research I've done on my own, men are more visual creatures than women. As women, maybe our attraction could grow if we're not initially attracted to someone. What do you think about that? Do you feel like it's different when you do work with men versus women?
I do agree that men are visual, but my own interpretation is I wonder if this is because men don't get the chance in this culture to develop the way emotionally women do. And I wonder
that's a really good point.
did. I wonder if they did, would that still be the case? Like if they wouldn't be so sexually focused, because that's how men are rewarded, through sex. So, the more sex they engage in, their self-esteem goes on. That's how their reward system goes. So I would be curious, like if we rewrote history and men and women developed emotionally the same, how that would look like if men wouldn't be as visual.
Right. I wonder if Gen Z will give us a little window into that. I feel like, men and women of Gen Z, and anyone who identifies as anything else seem to be more in touch with their emotions and open about talking about their emotions too. So we will see as I start to get Gen Z clients that are old enough to date.
I know. I do see some progression there, which I'm happy about. But then I also see some behaviors that all like halt connection. So it could go either way.
Right. Because then it's also like everyone was raised with an iPhone or a screen or whatever, always in front of your face.
Exactly.
So, we'll do an update in like 5 years and see what's happening.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yes.
So something you said earlier, I wanted to ask you more about, because I think at least I get a lot of people that say this, where, I go on a date, I'm attracted to this person, but they're not attracted to me. And when that happens more than once or twice, it does kind of start to hurt your ego a little bit. And you're like, what's going on there? So, how do you approach that situation when someone comes to you? It's like, hey, I keep being attracted to these people, but I'm not getting anything back.
Yeah, I think let's question that, because how do you know they're not attracted to you? Was it a confirmed I'm not attracted to you, or was it something that didn't go further?
So let's say I've seen both, because I get to do the call after the date and say, hey, what'd you think? And, there have been some people I've worked with where it's like consistently they're attracted, but then the other person isn't attracted and it's not reciprocated.
Because I think it's different when you're working with a matchmaker. Obviously, you're getting that feedback. However,
Norm, in the real world, you don't.
Yeah. And in, most of my clients, they're all meeting either in the bars or online. And I will say that when you're meeting online, instead of writing these negative stories about yourself that they're not attracted, how do you know they didn't get back with an ex, or they were in the process of? How do you know that they were exploring options with somebody else and they moved forward with somebody else? I think, as I am so pro the online dating space, but the one negative is that there's so many options. So it does make things a little bit harder to connect in that early dating stage. But I think it also eliminates a lot of BS early on too. So everything has its pros and cons. So I guess I would start there and say, well, unless we know concrete evidence that they're not attracted to you, why are we going there?
Right. Yeah, because it's almost easier, at least as I'm thinking through what you're saying, it's almost easier to say, oh, well, they just weren't attracted to me, rather than, I did something super embarrassing, or I was rude to the waiter, or, just wasn't my best self. Maybe it's easier to just write it off that way. And then I think it all comes back to, how do we date introspectively?
And then that's what I would explore for like element 2. Like, if we know for sure that they weren't attracted to you, if it was a matchmaking thing, obviously it wasn't necessarily a visual thing. So something's happening on that date that's not going right now. So are we misrepresenting ourselves? Are nerves getting the best of us? Are we not a good talker? Are we playing the perfect card, where you're coming across so perfect, you're boring, and you're not even leaving an impact? So there's so many opportunities there where I try to avoid people going to, I'm not attractive. Like, let's stop that.
Right. Because we're all beautiful in our own way.
Absolutely.
And, I always tell people too, it's like, we need to find one person. Obviously, unless you want multiple partners, then you need to find multiple. But if you're looking for monogamy, you just need to find one. So, there's going to be a lot of people who are not for you and you're not for them. It's just part of the whole thing of dating.
And let's not stop making the stakes so high on this one person. Like, you are on a date for what? Maybe like 90 minutes to 3 hours if it went really well. And even if it went well and you didn't get a date too, this person is still meaningless. That's great that they're attractive, they check off some boxes. They're not enough. They're not giving you enough to show value, that you're devaluing yourself and making it, I am not attractive.
Right. And I feel like if, you are going on dates and that rejection is hitting just so hard, it might be time to call up John here and, think about, what those things are that you really are looking for, how you can be more confident. And going back to what we started this episode on with dating introspectively, you talked about thinking about, okay, what do I actually want? And what is that relationship like? What are some other questions people can kind of ask themselves if they're trying to think that way?
Yeah, I think we should have a really good vision of characteristics that work for us in a relationship. And I'll give you an example for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I like a partner that's a very gentle nurturer. So while maybe, I may find somebody who's very like a tough guy, attractive. That's all it is for me, because I know in a relationship, I need a gentle, nurturing type, because that type of person's not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing too. And this is all from like exploring things. So there also reaches a point too, when I work with some clients, where it's like introspection's over, go out and experiment. If we're going too far within and we're not applying anything, because I've seen that too. Just a little sidebar there.
Yeah.
But
because you need to put it into action too, and actually see, like, wait, is that actually something I want?
Right. And the same thing, like, and I'm kind of labeling people here, but if I'm going out on dates and I'm looking at characteristics that are attractive to me, like, what are my driving points? So my driving points are gentle, nurturing, good with money. Am I attracted to ambition? Absolutely. But what can happen with ambition? Sometimes ambitious people could be less compassionate because they're so focused on their goals. So as I'm getting to know someone, regardless of, the level of attraction I'm feeling towards this person, I'm looking to see now, because this is what dating is. It's almost like an investigation. So before I commit, and because I'm a high value person, before I commit to somebody, I'm going to see, this is someone going to meet my ultimate goal of a gentle, nurturing partner. That's my primary kind of stuff. And then I have secondary stuff too. And then this is kind of like what we look at. We look at, like, what's your template for dating? What are some of your primary things? And it could all be different. And based on your dating history, you might know, maybe, exploration to know. But if we're too focused on certain things that we know are, I guess I'll say, trivial, there's never going to be long-term success in our relationships, because physical chemistry will die out, physical connection will die out. Certain things that we think we're attracted to will not support, our growth. I think we should change the way we describe relationships. Instead of saying things like sexy, exciting, about like nourishing, stable, sustainable.
Yeah.
These are the things that we should be if again, and I always will correct myself here, if we're looking for long-term sustainable relationships.
Right. And I feel like usually the people who are probably listening to this podcast, trying to learn more about dating, are likely looking for some kind of committed relationship.
And it might shift. So you might find yourself in something that started out really fun and committed, where, you're only seeing each other, but then the goals shift. And this is sometimes where couples find themselves, like, in a phase where, are they going to stay together or are they going to part ways? And then that relationship might have to be redefined. I think we're also so opposed to shifting from lovers to friends. Why? This is someone you loved and you gave your heart to. Why can't they be in your life in a different capacity if the goals are different?
Right. And as long as you can communicate and set good boundaries, like you said, I think there definitely is the potential you could be friends with an ex. It's tough, though. I know, honestly, I've never really been able to do it myself.
It is tough.
Yeah. And John, what you were saying earlier about kind of the big qualities that matter to you, when you went on dates, or if you're still going on dates, do you think of situations where you can kind of see, ooh, does this person hit what I'm looking for? Or do you have questions, you always ask to kind of see if that person has the big, top 3 qualities?
Well, one thing, like if I was newly dating, I would want to see, and what I like about, it works with a matchmaker too, is before you meet someone in person, I would love to do a phone conversation or a FaceTime, because you have the date without having the date. So what information can I elicit before I have to sit down and have drinks or have a meal or whatever the situation is? One thing I always like to see is, how does this person describe themselves? How do I see them? So one question I would always ask usually is, can you give me a couple of adjectives that you would say either a stranger would describe you as, or someone who just known you for several years?
That's a really good question.
Right. So I want to see, like, is there a slow burn in terms of like their character development, what they would show me? And then the words that come, like, let's see, of course, how long we're talking and what slowly evolves, and is there a disconnect? And
that makes sense.
What will unravel from like the time we're getting to know each other?
Yeah, I mean, I love when people do a phone call, a video chat before you actually meet someone in person, especially if you're meeting someone online. At least through a matchmaker or a friend, you hope that person has, at least knows them or has vetted them. I know I do an hour-long interview with each person, but, people also show up differently for different people. So I've even had it happen to me where I asked lots of great questions like that, and then someone shows up totally different on a date because there's that added pressure or nerves or whatever it might be. So, doing that phone call could almost get some of those nerves out of the way because that person a little bit. You have something to go on going into that date.
Now, I'm curious for you, Abby, are you experiencing, as much as my clients are, being that you're in the matchmaking space, a lack of intention? I would imagine that people utilizing matchmakers are being a lot more intentional about their dating.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I cannot work with someone if they are just like, I kind of want to meet someone, they got to be hot, they got to be this, maybe I'll have some kids. You definitely have to be intentional about it. Or people who just want to go out and serial date, which I was one of those. So, I could maybe label that. That is like the least intentional thing you could do. And I know it because I did it. I was just like, I want to go have fun, which there's nothing wrong with that. I guess that was my intention.
Right.
But, and being authentic too, I know you mentioned that is a big thing of, when you do come to a matchmaker, you're going to have to be your authentic self because I'm going to ask you, about your past relationships, your sex life, all these different things. And if you're not authentic, I'll set you up with the wrong person because you're going to give me the wrong impression. So, I think those are two huge things. But I know a big complaint I get from people is that they're not getting any of that, whether it's meeting someone out and about or online. There's just more people. So you got to sift through a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what would you say are some of the biggest successes or a fun success that you've seen working with someone and getting them to look inside and then seeing them blossom and become a great dater or meet someone awesome?
Well, I guess for me, I measure my successes on my ability to call someone out on their BS.
Oh, yeah.
Them take it up well, and us to still continue to have a healthy working relationship. So, one recent success that comes to mind is I have a client that's in a relationship that has a bit of a chip on their shoulder. And I think it was time to bring to light about the attention, because it's been a lot of sessions about, should we break up? And I'm not going to advise the client to break up or remain together. But what I did say was, if we are going to stay together, that we need to stop waiting for the shoe to drop, because then we might as well break up now.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be.
Yeah, because what's the point then? If we're just going to sit there like peeking through our finger, just pull the Band-Aid now.
Yeah.
And when I said that, he caught himself. So I think that me trying to remain gentle, but like being very direct and going like, you got to wake up is the biggest success I have doing this business, because that's why I'm here. Because I do think there's a lot of people out there dating and in relationships, like there's so many people on autopilot. Like I need them to wake up. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing.
Oh, well, I appreciate that you are doing all this for people, and I'm sure the people you help appreciate it too. And if there's someone listening who's like, ooh, I gotta reach out to John, how can they contact you? What is it like to work with you? Give us the details.
Yeah. So my website's therelationshipprescriber.com, and I'm on Instagram at therelationshipprescriber. But working with me is pretty open-ended. You know, I'll do an intake session and explore like where we're going and where you've been. So we'll look at all your relationships, not just your romantic ones. I still like to see how people relate to other people in a platonic fashion, because it tells me a lot. And I do a lot of work with others in terms of people who are looking to get better friendships. You know, I see corporate clients, leaders looking to improve like their workplace team dynamics and create like trusting environments between like the boss and the employees. So it's pretty broad how I work with individuals, but most of my clients are in the dating romance space. So I'll meet with them. We'll do a little bit of history, and then we'll see what the goals are, and we'll take it from there. It's not usually a long-term thing. I would say on average, it's a couple of months that I work with. If we get into long-term, then I'm going to probably recommend therapy, because then I would differentiate coaching and therapy on how long we're working together. But ultimately, solution-focused with elements of psychology to get people where they want to be in their relationships and get them fulfilled.
And I love that you look at people's other relationships too. You know, I worked with a coach, and it was so helpful because we talked about all the different relationships, business, friendship, family, you know, my husband, everything, because it all is tied together in some way. I think we don't think about it, but when your other relationships are really strong, then your romantic ones will be really strong too. Would you agree?
Yeah. It's crazy because I had, you know, very early when I was doing this, I would have some clients and they would be like, you know, I haven't answered any of my friends' text messages back. And then I would be like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, right. What are you avoiding?
And I'd be like, what kind of energy are we putting into our friendships? Like, we're just putting so much into our partner. What's going to happen if this relationship goes somewhere? Where are those relationships going to be? You can't always guarantee them. So, you know, listen, it's tough to balance everything. Like that's the secret to life. But at the same time, if we're intentional on all of our relationships, we'll have times where we're not getting back, but we're not getting back to our friends. But it shouldn't be something where it's a constant, like if I'm in a relationship, you don't hear from me and you're my friend.
Right. We've all had that friend.
Repeat offenders. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, and now you broke up and now you want to come back and be friends? Okay.
Yeah. And remember, if you're that friend that's taking them back, have some boundaries.
Very true. I like it. And so I always like to end these episodes with some extra words of wisdom. It could be related to what we talked about, obviously dating and relationships in some way. But what extra advice would you give to our single listeners?
I think the best quote I've heard, and I don't know who said it, but I'll never get it out of my mind. And if this resonates with you, I think it's really the secret sauce to everything, is that in relationships, there's no victims, just willing participants. So if you could take that and kind of satiate on it and realize that it's usually two people that are 50-50, and even if you feel so wronged, that there's an element of something you put to the table. And I'm not, this is not speaking of abusive situations, but that this other person is a person too that hurt you. you could feel so empowered at the same time once you reach that place. And that's why I just love that quote, and I'll say it over and over and over and over again. And when anytime couples come to me for advice, I'll always say, listen, most of the time it's 50-50.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It takes two to tango. I love that quote. We got to look up who said it. We got to give that person credit, or just give you the credit. That's fine too.
I could take it. That's fine.
John, thank you so much for being here. We'll put everything in the show notes so people can reach out to you, and let's stay in touch. Thank you again.
Perfect. I'm so glad we did this.